And welcome to Super Week, everybody. Unfortunately, the Philadelphia Eagles are not participating. It was only 4 years ago where this was the lead up to not only a Super Bowl, but a Super Bowl win by the Philadelphia Eagles. That is not the case this year. They did make the playoffs, as we've documented for you, though these many weeks here on Birds 365. No, it is the Bengals and the Rams who will do battle on Sunday, and that'll be part of what we talk about this week here on Birds 365. But there are a lot of Eagle happenings as well. So we'll balance both what's going on in the National Football League and with our homestanding Philadelphia Eagles. John McMullen, you got to be a happy guy. Your guy JG sticking around.
No, it doesn't matter to me. I'm a little disappointed he didn't get the opportunity for him personally, but it's good for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not sure a lot of fans will agree with that. But the fact that they will have a second year and they sort of, now the personnel department, we got to talk about that. The Eagles took another hit there. But they understand the types of players he wants to fit what he wants to accomplish. So you have a little advantage there. And I always talk about continuity, and that was one of my concerns about this whole coaching cycle to begin with, is there were ultimately 9 open jobs, and they've all started to fill up, obviously, but people forget you got to hire assistant coaches as well. And I was concerned that the Eagles might start losing some assistants, which hasn't happened yet, but there's still plenty of work to be done around the league. So still something to keep an eye on, but continuity, man. The last thing you want to do is go from one defensive coordinator to another in 3 years, have 3 different ones in 3 years. So from the Eagles' perspective, it's a big positive.
Here's why I'm not going to be all that upset, just from a personal standpoint, for Jonathan Gannon or to cry him a river. He's a young dude. He looks like a young dude. He is a young dude. His coaching resume says he's a young dude. If he's as good as some people think that he is, and I know at least one team that thought enough of him to bring him in and give him a second interview, the Houston Texans, he'll get another shot. You always worry about that. You always worry about that when you don't get a gig. Will that gig come around? Will you get another chance? Will someone else take enough interest? You're right. You never know, but there are enough signs pointing to the fact that Jonathan Gannon, if he does a good job here in Philadelphia, if the Eagle defense is as good, if not better next year, and they should upgrade the talent, so by virtue of that, it should get better. Oh, he's going to be in that mix. He's going to be on that list of hot coaching candidates. He'll get another chance to try and get a head coaching job down the road.
Yeah, he should. And, you're right. I mean, I'm not sitting here crying for the guy. He's very young, and if he continues to do a good job, he'll get another opportunity. And you can make a strong argument that, look, if you're going to get other opportunities down the road, you probably don't want the Houston Texans. I mean, this is the second straight year where that hiring has looked like a disaster from outside the building. And they're evidently going to end on Lovie Smith today. Wasn't even mentioned through this entire process, and they're trying to now spin that, he was always involved because he was assistant head coach there to begin with. But no, he wasn't. And, it's one of those things. Look, we are where we are in current society. We are where we are in a hot button issue and the lack of minority coaches with the NFL. All of that is valid. All of that is true. I think at a different time frame, the way they were talking about Jonathan Gannon, he probably would have gotten the job, but they didn't have the courage of their own conviction. Same holds true with Josh McCown. And you probably don't want to be involved with that, to be honest, because it's probably not going to work out long term. So if you look at it from that perspective, but I'm sure from a personal level, he's disappointed because he thought he was going to be a head coach in the NFL probably early in the process, and he's not going to be. So from that, it's just human nature to be a little bit disappointed.
Let me ask you about the Texans. I don't want to get down a Houston rabbit hole, but I think it deserves at least a little bit more investigation. You mentioned Josh McCown, who was here as an Eagle backup quarterback. played an Eagle playoff game, as a matter of fact, because Carson Wentz got hurt, and he had to come in off the bench and give them a shot against the Seattle Seahawks. He was in the conversation last year to become their head coach before they hired David Culley. At the time, everybody said, whoa. You're going to give a head coaching job in the NFL to a guy who's never coached a day in his life? Are you kidding me? Well, we come back to it 12 months later, and he's in the same mix, and he's in the same conversation. And oh, by the way, his coaching resume is the exact same thing. Zippity doo-dah. He didn't even coach this year, which people speculated on the fact that he should have been part of the Texans staff if they liked him as much, to give him an interview and consider him heavily to be the head coach. Why wasn't he part of David Culley's staff? If you're David Culley, who also kind of came out of left field, assistant coach forever, gets his chance to be an NFL head coach, you think he's going to say, yeah, no, I don't want that McCown guy on my staff? No, of course he's going to take him on his staff. Is that just more signs of the dysfunction of the organization? Are they not planning properly? What the hell's going on down there in Houston above and beyond Deshaun Watson? Now, we know that's not all their fault. Now, how they handle it is their business, but they didn't do what is being claimed has been done by the quarterback with his masseuses. But what kind of a rudderless organization are the Houston Texans?
Yeah, I mean, the thought process was that Nick Caserio would go down there and at least clean up some of that. We always talk about Jack Easterby. He's the problem when it comes to Deshaun Watson. Remember, they had a fractured relationship before any of the Watson allegations from a legal entanglement started to develop. In fact, if you remember, Jody, at the beginning of it, there were people speculating that the Texans were the ones who released the information because there was so much acrimony, and they didn't, but there was so much acrimony between the two sides long before Deshaun Watson ever had his personal troubles. And it all kind of goes back to Jack Easterby, who's one of their the head of football operations, essentially ahead of Nick Caserio. And there was a hope that Nick would come in from New England and at least sort of iron these things out. And by these things, I mean sort of the everyday work of running an organization, and the head coaching search would certainly be an important part of that when you're trying to get a new head coach. It hasn't. And when you're dysfunctional, this is what Doug Pederson's got to watch out for in Jacksonville. Because, nobody likes Trent Baalke. If you say, okay, who are the two most disliked people in the NFL from an organizational standpoint? It's probably Jack Easterby and Trent Baalke battling 1-2. And you can talk about bringing Rick Spielman in. Depends what the power structure is, who's got the actual power. But Doug's got to be wary about that. And he's got experience dealing with micromanaging front offices. So maybe he's better equipped to handle it. But, man, the Houston Texans, this is 2 consecutive years. And people, first of all, why are you even firing David Culley? Number one, if you're going to be, if you're not going to show the courage of your convictions, why are you even firing the guy to begin with? Now you got a second bridge head coach on the horizon. It doesn't make sense from that perspective. And yeah, why do you want to be involved with that? So I think when the emotion dies down and the disappointment dies down, I think Jonathan Gannon will realize this is probably the best thing for him long term. As far as Josh McCown, I've had this argument with a lot of people. We've said it on the show. Look, I don't get why 20 years of experience in the NFL isn't regarded as experience. I brought up the NBA. Derek Fisher and Jason Kidd were the two guys who changed it, because when I covered the NBA, I heard the same things about Derek Fisher. Now, he came right off the floor to be a head coach. Now, he wasn't successful, and that's what people always say, but he changed the thinking. He changed the thinking to where, other guys who can come off the floor and become head coaches and have become a little bit more successful. Kerr would be one. Now, he was out for a while, but he didn't do a lot of, people are saying, well, you got to go quality control at Sam Houston State and work your way up. Steve Kerr's not going to do that. In the NFL, Josh McCown, forget about it, Tom Brady. But why is he going to do that? He's got a lot of money. So if you think, and everybody thinks because he was here, and the Eagles thought the same thing. After the playoffs, Jody, in 2019, so after the 2018 season, or was it after the 2019 season? That was the game where Carson got injured early against Seattle. Josh McCown had to come in the game, tore his hamstring in the second quarter, finished the game, almost won the game. And, Seattle was a better team. And they talked to him after that game in an exit meeting about joining the coaching staff. And Josh thought he could still play. And obviously, being a backup quarterback in the NFL, you're going to make more money than the Eagles wanted to start him out at a lower level job. Typically, was going to make more money, and he felt he still had some time into it. Then they brought him back as the first so-called COVID quarterback when he would sit in East Texas and be away from the team just in case. But he was in Houston. Houston felt the same way about him. The Houston said, hey, come in, be our backup quarterback. And they started grooming him to join the coaching staff. They obviously want him to be there, but they don't have the courage or their convictions to take their hits. Because you're going to take some hits in this environment. You're going to take some significant hits if you hire Josh McCown with no experience over minority candidates. When that's on the front page of, I always say, it's one thing to be on P1 on ESPN. When CNN and Fox News shows up, you're in trouble. The Washington Post, the New York Times, they're covering the lack of minority hirings. And the Texans don't have the stomach for it. They don't have the stomach for it. So they got to go through this rigmarole year after year after year. Either have the courage of your convictions or don't. And people who criticize the Texans for saying, why are you even hiring Josh McCown? That's great too. What I'm saying is if you believe in the guy, hire him. If you don't interview him.
Here's my thought process on a guy like Josh McCown. In part, I agree with you. In part, I see where the Texans and or any other potential hiring outlet would potentially look at it. Backup quarterbacks are basically like coaches.
Yeah.
If you're on the sidelines in all those meetings, advising your starting quarterback what you're seeing, how you can help them on that sideline with the ball cap on, holding the clipboard, you're like a coach. You're getting paid to be a player, which is nice because those assistant coaches, as you correctly pointed out, don't make the kind of money that players actually make. You're already doing it. He already did it. But there are relationships and there are ways that you handle your business and how players feel. When you're a teammate, when you're a guy who's out there taking that reps and you're talking to the quarterback and your other teammates, and you're doing so as a teammate. As soon as you officially take those shoulder pads off, it's a different relationship. And you have to interact with players differently and talk to players differently. I think an experience in that is only going to help. Is it impossible to go straight from playing to coach? No, of course not. You gave a couple of NBA examples. But do I think that buffer year of doing some coaching just so you get those relationships down, you know how to handle them, you know what buttons to push and not push is important? Yeah, I do. And I think shame on McCown that he didn't take advantage of that this year. I think he could have. I think he should have. If he had, I think it'd be much easier for the Texans to hire him at this point. So if I had a chance to sit down and talk to him, I'd tell him, Josh, why the hell didn't you coach somewhere this year? Why didn't you grab some position this year to just get yourself in a better position to get the big job? So that's my take on it. I think you need at least 1 year in that position.
I'm gonna put this in radio parlance, so you'll get it. Maybe fans will get it, maybe they won't. If you go into a radio station, you've been doing this longer than anybody, and they put you in a position of doing updates, sports updates at 15 or 15 after the hour, 15 before the hour. Guess what? You are pigeonholed for a long time, and you get, oh, that's the update guy. And everybody wants to be on the air, and everybody wants to talk to Jody McDonald. Everybody wants to be Jody McDonald. Everybody wants to be on CBS radio. Everybody wants to be on WIP. The minute you pigeonhole yourself, you're pigeonholed. Now, you can overcome it. People have overcome it,
Right.
but it's much more difficult. Now, I agree with your sentiment, but I think that's Josh's sentiment. I think. I can't be 100% positive, that type of thing. It's like, people talk about him as this natural coach, having this natural ability, and he's been able to get farther on this than anybody else. Like I said, it's happened in the NBA. If it's going to happen in the NFL, it's probably going to happen with Josh McCown. Who knows? If Tom Brady turns up tomorrow and says, I want to coach, or Peyton Manning says, I want to coach, they have so much cachet, so much gravitas, they might get an opportunity, but they have too much money. Why would they want that hassle? Why would they want that? You got to really love the sport to go in that type of direction. I'm not saying either way is right. I'm not saying either way is wrong. I think ultimately, if Josh could get an offensive coordinator job, even a quarterback's coach job, I think that would be the better way for him to go, and I think he would be an NFL head coach in short order. Anything lower than that, I probably wouldn't entertain it if I were Josh McCown. But everybody's different, and I don't know how much. By the way, Jody, and you probably remember this, Mike Schmidt, wanted to be a manager after his career. He didn't want to do the heavy lifting. Back then, you couldn't. He said, I'm Mike Schmidt. I'm the best third baseman of all time. I'm a Hall of Famer. Give me this job. Give me that job. That's not the way baseball worked at the time. He didn't want to go down and manage in Class A or Single A, and it never came to fruition. And obviously, as I said, different level of player. I mean, that's a Hall of Fame player in one sport versus just a long-time backup. But just from a pure, and I've said this about Doug Pederson, different way, because people said the same thing about Doug Pederson with the coaching staff. Well, he's got no experience. He hasn't coached long. The guy spent 13 stinking years in the NFL. Josh McCown spent 2 decades in the NFL. Just from that, don't tell me that's not experience, because I'd rather have experience learning every NFL offense under the sun, because he was on about 57 different teams as well, than some, I ran RPOs at Oklahoma. I ran RPOs at Alabama. I don't care. You learn one offense. This guy knows every offense there is at the professional level.
Yeah,
just from that narrow view.
You can't compare McCown to Dougie, because Dougie did the work. Dougie joined Andy's staff. Dougie worked his way up Andy's staff.
But he still got
McCown
some
hadn't
of the
done
same
any
hits.
of that yet. He just wants to say, I want to move straight from being a player to a head coach in the NFL.
But
I think that's obnoxious.
Perfect.
I think you've got a perfect example. You brought him up, Doug Pederson. You got to put some time in before you get the big gig.
And I hear what you're saying, and for the most part, I agree with you. But it also shows a little bit about that pigeonholing I was speaking of. Because remember, Doug did work his way up, and he was still taking the same hits as no experience. He doesn't know anybody in the NFL.
Now he's got his second gig, so any of the stuff that he
won the
along
Super
the way,
Bowl.
I'm not, again, much like Jonathan Gannon. Shed no tears, Doug. You got a gig. You won a Super Bowl. Now you got a second gig, and there aren't that many guys that get second gigs, and Doug has now got his second one. So, from time to time, he had to hear about the fact that he didn't have enough experience. He kind of beat that rap.
Well, yeah, I'm not, again, it's not crying for Doug Pederson. It's just pointing out the silliness of those people, because you will hear it today. You've heard it on our show, Jody. You'll say, well, Doug, how can Doug put together a staff? He doesn't know any assistant coaches. I'm like, ask a follow-up stinking question. Why? This is my pet peeve with my industry. Are you kidding me? He doesn't know people in the NFL. He knows everybody in the NFL. It doesn't. If you take you peel one layer off the onion, you don't even have to peel the whole onion, Jody. It doesn't hold any water if you peel one layer off. But people buy it like it's science. It doesn't make sense to me. That's all I'm saying, is you get pigeonholed. And I think he's an example.
It will be very interesting as to how this staff is put together down in Jacksonville.
Because we know
Doug Pederson's history here in Philadelphia. He came in, they said, we got all these good coaches still under contract. What do you think, Doug? And Doug said, yeah, we'll keep them all. If that's what you guys want, you're giving me the head coaching job. Yeah, go ahead, pick my staff. The more he got selective about his staff, he got shown the way out the door after winning a Super Bowl. When he started to get a little pushback on, no, I kind of want to I want to advance this guy. I want to make him boom, boom, see you later, bye, gone. So it'll be very interesting to see the give and take on the staff that Doug puts together down in Jacksonville. So, yes. Did the Eagles make any trade? No. Did the Eagles sign anybody? No. There's no new news on the Eagles. Just former Eagles or current Eagle coaches and where they could have been heading and where they are heading are our main topics of discussion here today on Birds 365. We're going to discuss it with our first guest, frequent contributor, sometimes co-host when Johnny Max got COVID tested. By the way, when was the last time you took a COVID test?
Oh, it's been a while. COVID testing over, so I'm like a regular person. Who knows? I gotta get my COVID test at CVS or through the mail or whatever.
My wife's got a couple of them just sitting around the house. I just look at them and move on by. I don't need to be sticking anything up my nose. Our buddy Jeff Kerr from CBSSports.com, host here on Birds 365, going to hop aboard, do a guest spot with us to talk about the coaching carousel in the NFL, maybe a little bit about the coaching problems in the NFL with minority hirings, and certainly we're going to get his thoughts on the upcoming big game next Sunday. Jeff Kerr next here on Birds 365.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
You know you like being right. That's why you should enroll in an Independence Blue Cross plan. It's the health plan chosen by more people than any other, with more doctors and hospitals, more benefits that really rock, more of the coverage you want for the right price, including free doctor visits 24/7. It's a choice you can feel good about, because when you're right, you're right. And when you've got Independence Blue Cross, you're right where you need to be. Call 1-844-200-2583 today to get an Independence Blue Cross plan.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Appreciate you streaming on in here on Birds 365. McMullen and McDonald here with you. A fellow follically challenged bud joins us here. You see him co-hosting with Johnny Max. Got to be out. You read him on CBSSports.com. Jeff Kerr good enough to hop on in with us here on Birds 365. All right, I'm going to hit you first today, JK. Who had the better weekend? Doug Pederson because he got the Jacksonville Jaguar gig, or Jonathan Gannon because he didn't get the Houston Texans gig?
I'll go with the guy who was actually hired. So I'll go Doug Pearson on that, Jody.
I don't know, Jeff. You're too, Jacksonville is a messy situation as well. I don't think there's anything messier than Houston. What's your take on the Houston Texans, though? We'll start there with Jonathan Gannon got notified over the weekend. He was out. Then the news came that Josh McCown is out. All of a sudden, Lovie Smith is involved. It certainly seems to me like the wheels are starting to turn about the lawsuit from Brian Flores. And all of a sudden, obviously, Brian was painted as a finalist, but that nobody believed that in Houston. All of a sudden, here's Lovie Smith coming out of left field, and they're saying, oh, Lovie was always involved. Are you buying it?
No, I'm still laughing at the NFL basically say, oh, we don't have a problem hiring minority head coaches and black head coaches on Tuesday. And then on Saturday, they pivot and they're like, oh, you know what? We may have a problem here because none of them have been hired yet. But back to Mike McDaniel's technically one. So
yeah, that's going to be interesting too.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is going to regard Mike as the type of minority hiring they want, but we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, but the whole Lovie Smith thing to me, I get he's been in the organization for a bit, and I don't know, it just seems like a job right now no one wants. And I'm kind of having this feeling that, I don't know, maybe it was Josh McCown, maybe they wanted to give the job to Josh McCown, or maybe they wanted to give the job to Gannon, but Gannon had a couple demands, like, okay, this is who I want as my coordinator, and Texans maybe balked at that. It feels like now a lot of these coaches applying for that job in particular, it's, okay, well, I want this, this, and this. And Texans are like, well, no, you're not getting that. And I don't know. It feels like they wanted Josh McCown to be their head coach, but there's a lot of public backlash. Josh McCown has been through more interviews than he actually had days as an NFL assistant coach, which is crazy if you think about it.
Yeah, 2-0. He's pitching a shutout.
And good for him that at least he's still in the mix. Because you're right, at some point people are going to go, well, why doesn't he ever get hired for the job? You mentioned the fact that some people come in with demand, some people don't. All negotiations are handled differently. Down in Jacksonville, where Doug Pederson got the job, Shad Khan, in his introductory press conference with Doug the other day, was asked, was Doug Pederson the only one you offered the job to? And his response was, well, no one else is sitting up here with me, are they? Well, that doesn't answer the question. That wasn't the question that was asked, and that doesn't answer it, which makes you believe that maybe he did offer it to someone else, but it came with conditions of the person, Byron Leftwich, that he offered it to, and he wasn't about to cave on those type things. Does that hurt Doug at all? Or does it help Doug that it helped him get the gig, but if he was, quote-unquote, the second choice, does that compromise his start as the head coach of the Jags at all?
Well, it helped the Eagles that he wasn't exactly their first choice back in 2016, and they ended up winning a Super Bowl. Sometimes the first choice isn't exactly the best choice, and I think Eagles fans are starting to learn this with Nick Sirianni right now. He wasn't exactly their first choice to be their head coach either, but it's working out for him. So I think it really benefited Doug that Byron Leftwich decided, you know what, I don't want Trent Baalke in here. I want my guy. Obviously, the guy was Adrian Wilson, who he knew the Cardinals for many, many years in that organization. But to me, it just seems like, okay, Doug Pearson said, I can work with Trent Baalke. You mix up the front office here. We can go with that. As long as I get to pick my assistant coaches, which it seems like Jacksonville's letting him do. Mike Caldwell is getting the first interview for the defensive coordinator job is a perfect example of that. But also, he gets to work with an uber-talented quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. Urban Meyer just did not know how to use it. It's amazing how a college football head coach doesn't know that the best formation for Trevor Lawrence was probably anything with a zone read or a run-pass option, and he didn't even try to do it.
Yeah, you bring up Mike Caldwell. Wow, yeah. How did Doug know Mike Caldwell?
Oh, I don't know. What were they, teammates back in 1999?
Yeah. I mean, nobody. Evidently, if you're not on the staff, you can't hire anybody. You don't know anybody. But that's my own pet peeve. And all of a sudden, he does know other people that from his history in the league. But I will say, when it comes to Jacksonville, it's kind of eerie because you mentioned the Eagles. Yeah, they can do all the revisionist history. And by the way, Jody's right. Nobody's ever not lost a coach. Shad Khan, nobody's up here. The Vikings with Jim Harbaugh, everybody's like, he's getting the job.
The Colts lost a coach, McMullen. They did lose a coach.
Well, he walked away at the altar. And who else? Jacksonville, by the way, this is almost a lot of symmetry to this. The Eagles, for Eagles fans who don't know, in 2016, won an Adam Gase, number one. And then Adam came walking into the NovaCare complex and said, I want control over this. I want control over that, because why not? You're Adam Gase, right? And the Eagles had just gone through Chip Kelly, and they said, well, we're going to talk to some other people. Then they wanted Ben McAdoo, who was driving down the New Jersey Turnpike, turned around at the Molly Pitcher service area. I just throw that in. I don't know what service area. Giants convinced him to come back.
I heard it was Richard Stockton, but that's just rumor at this point.
Yeah. And so he was their third choice. Some say number 4, if you want to throw Tom Coughlin. I don't believe they had as much interest in Tom Coughlin as some people believe. Here, I got news for you. It was not only Byron Leftwich, it was also Matt Eberflus. They wanted Matt Eberflus and lost out to Chicago. So Doug is number 3 again. And so what? He's the best of the 3, just like he was the best of the 3 here. Sometimes it's better to get lucky than good. And you match up Trevor Lawrence with a guy who's proven, at least for a short window, that he can develop quarterbacks. And you can say, well, how much Frank Reich helped him? How much John DiFilippo helped him? Makes a lot of sense to me with Jacksonville. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, don't you think?
I think so. I think that with a lot of head coaches around this league. If we really look deep into the hire of every single head coach, they probably were not their first choice. I mean, I think in 2013, Chip Kelly was the Eagles' first choice, and we saw it didn't work out that well. 1999, it was between Andy Reid and Jim Haslett. I'm sure they wanted both, but
they wanted Jim Haslett before Andy. No question about it.
And Jim Haslett never got a head coaching job after the Saints. So, and look what Andy Reid's done: 220 wins, top 5 all time. He's got Super Bowl, all these conference championship game appearances. It's again, I think sometimes you get lucky, and Jacksonville just probably went back and said, you know what? Let's go back to the guy we first interviewed, because for some reason no one's hired him yet. And Sean Khan's probably ecstatic. Like, look, I got the guy. I got a guy that, oh, by the way, my quarterback loves him already, because they see Super Bowl on the resume. And I know the big discussions, the minority head coaches and all that, but how can you argue over anybody right now over Doug Pederson, the one coach that's been hired that has a Super Bowl on his resume?
The point you made was right where I was going next. For a kid who's only been in the league for 1 year, Trevor Lawrence knows how to play the media hype game pretty damn well. Oh, working with another quarterback. Our mindsets are exactly alike. We got our guy here in Jacksonville with Doug Pederson. He's got all the Jaguar fans all excited because the coach and the quarterback are on the exact same page. We'll see when the season starts, but they're talking a very good game a couple days in to Doug taking over as the head coach. So I give Trevor Lawrence the nod on that one. All right, back to the Eagles and losing people. They didn't lose Doug. They fired Doug. They could have lost Jonathan Gannon. They didn't. But they have lost 2 executives here in the last 10 days to 2 weeks. It was just a year ago that we were told the Eagles front office is a general manager factory, that they've got some of the best young minds in football on their staff, and that they're going to get scooped up and become general managers elsewhere. Well, they didn't become general managers, but they became assistant general managers out of town. Ian Cunningham first, Brandon Brown this weekend. John and I like to talk about continuity a lot here. The continuity is a good thing if you can keep it. Well, Eagles don't have that in the front office because all their guys are being scooped up by other organizations. Do they just take a bow and say, thank you for giving us credit for being right and acknowledging that we had that good a staff put together here? Or do you go, who's left to help Howie? Which way do we look at it as Eagle fans here?
Well, Howie probably has guys in line to replace him. Like, I'm sure he knows Ian Cunningham was going to get a promotion from another organization at some point, just like he knew back when Andrew Berry was promoted to be the executive vice president of the Cleveland Browns. He had a plan in place. Brandon Brown was going to be a general manager at some point. And again, this is what I like about the Eagles front office. And same with Joe Banner. They always seem to continue that continuity, where it was Joe Banner, Howie Roseman, who's the GM before Banner? Tom Hodrak, I think it was.
Tom Hodrak, yeah.
Yeah, Tom Hodrak. Yeah, it was the same thing. They just seem to know how to promote in and out. And I'm not too worried about them losing guys like that. And because I think basically what I've been reading is, and I think Peter King might have mentioned this in his Football Morning in America column a couple of weeks ago. It seems like Howie Roseman in particular has learned from the mistakes of the 2020 draft and, seems to trust his guys more. And yeah, he lost a couple of his guys, but there are guys that are going to promote in-house. They may bring some guys from the outside, but the Eagles, they are a GM factory. They're just deep in front office talent, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Yeah, this is one of the things that Jeffrey Lurie talked about when he tried to explain, and Jeff, you've seen a Jeffrey Lurie press conference. They generally turn into a 20-minute opening statement and people start to tune out. But it was about 2 years ago where I think he mentioned the GM factory. Might have been last year. They all run together, but he was trying to explain like the GM job, which I try to explain here, is much bigger than people realize. It's not about picking this guy or picking that guy. It's a really, really big job. And, one of the parts of the job is putting together a staff. Now, people have criticized me for saying the Eagles are really well regarded around the NFL. Well, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, People keep plucking from this organization because they respect how they have set up their front office, and Ian Cunningham, Brandon Brown just being the latest. But, when they brought in Andrew Berry, afterwards it came out that Howie knew he was going to lose him very quickly to a GM job, and it turned out to be basically a calendar year. In that entire time, he had Catherine Raish sort of shadowing him in the building, in the facility, to take over the heir apparent, so to speak. And she's now the vice president of football operations, and she got a GM interview, by the way, in this offseason with Minnesota. So Anthony Patch is probably the next up to be sort of that director of player personnel, which is under Andy Weidel. Yeah, man, you can laugh at their term. They're really bad with messaging when they say things like gold standard or GM factory or quarterback factory. They're really bad with that. But at the core of it, they are a GM factory, and people look, hey, who's Philadelphia got? Let's pluck from Philadelphia. It's not a bad thing. I'll say that.
Well, same with Joe Douglas. Like, I'm sure the Eagles knew Joe Douglas was going to be a general manager at some point in time. They had Andy Weidel waiting right in the wings. He was Joe Douglas's right-handed man. They're like, Joe Douglas can't do this. Joe Douglas can't do that. And I'm like, well, that remains to be seen as a general manager. But the Eagles, to me, they evaluated a lot of good talent when Joe Douglas was here, and they're still doing that with Andy Weidel. It's just a matter of actually picking said talent.
No, I went there with this a couple of weeks ago when he became available. I went there again after Ian Cunningham left. I'm going to go there again now that Brandon Brown has left. I liked Mike Mayock more than, and I know Mel Kiper. I'm buddies with Mel Kiper. I've done shows with Mel Kiper. Mel was the original. He's the OG. But I'll tell you that I think that Mayock took it to another level on the NFL Network when it came to covering the NFL draft and getting scouting reports out and giving you information on it. I got him the gig as the general manager of the Raiders, Oakland before LA, whatever. I've always appreciated the guy. I've had him on as guests. I think he understands what it takes to scout collegiate talent, project it to the NFL level. He's available. The Raiders blew him out. You knew it was going to happen because he was a Gruden guy and a Gruden hire, and he's just sitting out there, and the Eagles have an opening or two in their front office. Why wouldn't you hire Mike Mayock today? You want to get him in here before the draft. That's his specialty. That's where you want to lean on him. He probably learned some lessons as the general manager of the Raiders. But he's a Philly guy. Don't know if the money fits or the organizational fit would be there. But I at least inquire, and I've heard nothing of the sort. Are the Eagles missing out here?
See, this is the thing with Mike Mayock. I think Mike Mayock is probably one of the smartest football minds out there. But with the way they've drafted in Vegas or the Raiders the last couple of years, David Arnett is the latest example. You have to wonder what they're thinking. If they're just looking at pure football talent and they're ignoring character, I wouldn't mind giving Mike Mayock a call just to hear his take on some things, but I feel like he really damaged his reputation as an executive based on, a lot of these questionable moves the Raiders have made, whether it's character picks or you pick Lynn Bowden in the third round and you trade him before the season even starts because you're like, I mean, right that he admits that he messed up, but how do you mess up a third round pick that quick? And to me, Mike Mayock's, again, one of the smartest minds in football, but I feel like he's going to go back to having a career on NFL Network or one of the draft guys than in the front office. But if I'm the Eagles, I'd call him and say, hey, you watch the Senior Bowl. What do you think? You watch the West Shrine game. What do you think? It never hurts to have an extra voice. I just don't think he needs to be the guy making the decisions.
No, and the Eagles probably don't have a spot for him. But Jody's right. He'll go back to the NFL Network, and he'll be the best in the business there. One of the problems, and this goes back to Doug Pederson or anybody else, or Byron Leftwich in his attempt to tie himself to Adrian Wilson and get into Jacksonville as a team. You mentioned all those mistakes with the Raiders. Well, John Gruden was in charge. John Gruden had the final say. Now, who knows who said, I want this guy, I want that guy. I know Mike liked Cleveland Burrow a lot. Probably overdrafted him. Not probably at this point.
But if we're gonna nitpick Mayock's draft pick, how about Max Crosby in the fourth round?
That's the thing I was going to say. But look at from Howie Roseman's perspective. That's exactly where I'm going, Jody. So I thank you for going there. People forget. They don't care. Did he get an edge rusher? Ultimately, he got arguably one of the 2 or 3 best edge rushers in the league in Max Crosby, but he missed on the top 4 pick. Same thing here with Jordan Mailata and Andre Dillard. People kill Howie Roseman for Andre Dillard. He got a left tackle. He got an unconventional pass.
So what?
Yeah, but that's just the way it is. In this league, you are graded on your first round picks, and it's very short sighted. It's very, very short sighted. But that's the life of a general manager.
I'd like to see him be on the Philadelphia Eagles staff. All right, I'm sticking with it. You're not changing my opinion. I'm not changing. Nobody's changing.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I'll say
Apparently,
that.
I'm not changing anybody else's either. That's fine. We'll see if the Eagles actually make a call. All right, Kerr, we need your take on the Super Bowl this upcoming week.
There's a game?
Yeah, there is actually a game going to be played. We're dealing with all this off-field stuff and coaching carousels and quarterback factories and like. The quarterback factory that is the Cincinnati Bengals hasn't been for 30 years. And then they got Joe Burrow. And all of a sudden they're in a Super Bowl in just 2 years of Joe Burrow's play. Didn't we see Joe Burrow here last year at the Link playing a tie against the Eagles? Man, football can change quickly. And this guy's now the darling of the NFL. And he should be because he's played that well. I did a couple spots on CBS over the weekend talking to guys and about who's got the better team, and had our buddy Matt Manicherian to look at a through the numbers angle of the matchup of the Super Bowl, and he said the Rams certainly should win if it's that simple. It's not. The Bengals are one of those teams of destiny, and I think here on Birds 365, people should appreciate that because it was only 4 years ago that the Eagles were an underdog to the Falcons, an underdog to the Vikings, an underdog to the Patriots that swept all three and had themselves a parade. I just think the Bengals are a bit of a team of destiny right now, Jeff Kerr. Are you looking at it as, no, Jody, don't get too emotionally tied to this. Just evaluate the rosters, evaluate who's got the best team. How are you looking at the Super Bowl Bengals Rams?
If their offensive line didn't suck, I'd be right with you. That's the issue. I don't know how they're going to stop Aaron Donald and Von Miller right now, who, since Von Miller's gotten to the Rams, Donald's first in tackles for loss. He's tied with Von Miller. The Rams are the only team with, I think they ended up being the only team in the league with 3 players with 10+ sacks. Now we're counting Von Miller's stats in Denver, of course, but he wasn't as dynamic in Denver as he was with the Rams. So great job, Les Snead, right? They're trading all those draft picks for. I think the Bengals offensive line got really lucky against the Chiefs after rewatching that game. The Chiefs just didn't get home. Frank Clark didn't get home. Jerron Reed didn't get home. I don't think Aaron Donald and Von Miller are going to have that problem. So to counter that, Zach Taylor is going to have to allow Joe Burrow to get rid of the ball quick. They're going to have to run the ball a lot with Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine. That's how I think the Bengals stay in the game. And I think the Bengals have as good of a shot as anybody to win this Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, I just feel like if Joe Burrow has to drop back 45, 50 times to win this football game, the Bengals aren't going to win, and he's going to get sacked, and he's going to get frustrated. And we'll see how cool Joe is when things aren't going the way they play. Because, look, I just keep looking at it this way. The Titans probably should have beaten this team. The Chiefs definitely should be in this team. They blew it. I just think the Rams are too talented at the end of the day. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it'll be an entertaining game, but ultimately, I can't go against my principle with offensive and defensive lines. I went against it last year because of my, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes love, but I'm not doing it this year.
Well, Jeff, I'm going to play devil's advocate with you, and I'm going to go down this route. Jody knows I hate when people say so-and-so has only got 1 or so-and-so's only got 2 when we're talking about quarterbacks, whether it's, Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning or all these great Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And Tom Brady kind of ruins the discussion, right? Because he's got 7. And everybody, well, why can't everybody be Tom Brady? Well, that's why Tom Brady's Tom Brady. So he's the outlier. You mentioned the offensive line because I'm with you. It's a disaster. We constantly talk about it. I say it all the time. You can't play offensive football if you can't block anybody. Well, Joe Burrow's found a way to block anybody. I'm not saying Joe Burrow is Tom Brady. People are going to jump down that route. But he looks, at least early in his career, special. He looks like he's got an ability to figure out what the heck is going on and elevate his teammates. Now, we also elevate his teammates. They have so many weapons. That's easy. But he's elevating his offensive line as well because he realizes they can't block. And I remember talking to Frank Reich about this with Carson Wentz. And Frank is a former quarterback. I asked him, how much of pass protection is on the responsibility of the quarterback? In other words, if you know you don't have a great offensive line, you got to adjust yourself. Joe seems to have that ability. Now, I know people are going to say he got sacked 9 times against Tennessee. He did, but he found a way to win the game in the biggest spot. Am I barking up the wrong tree, or is there something to that?
I think it has a lot to do with what you just mentioned, Joe Burrow. He just seems to be that guy. It's, you give me a pair of 2s and I'm going to get a full house. That's just the way Joe Burrow is wired. That's how he's geared. He knows what's at stake for Sunday. I think he'll have enough adjustments in the deck to, how can I word it, to find a way to get the Bengals points. But my biggest worry is at the end of the day when it's going to be 30-23 or something like that, and he needs a drive to win. I just think the Rams are going to tee off, and they have the secondary that can.
Well, they teed off against Jimmy Garoppolo. That's what happened at the end of that game. But he's not.
Jimmy Garoppolo isn't Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
By the way, McMullen, I have a question for you. Who do you think's a better quarterback in this matchup?
That's a good question. I think Joe will ultimately be the better quarterback. Is he the better quarterback right now? I think so. I give him a slight advantage, but I think it's closer than people think. I've always been a Matthew Stafford guy. I think Matthew Stafford's a good quarterback, a really good quarterback in this league, stuck on a bad team, bad organization. He's kind of proven it. He's not great, but he's that next level. And I think people have started to see that. I think Joe's got a chance to be, superstar top 5 quarterback. But right now, I think it's very, very close. I'd give a slight edge to Joe Burrow for that reason. Look, Matthew Stafford's got more talent. Matthew Stafford's got the better team. Matthew Stafford should win this football game. It's the opposite of the Lions. Joe Burrow's sort of with the bad offensive line. Now he's got great skill position talent, but we keep talking. They are in the Super Bowl with that offensive line. That is an accomplishment right there. That is a big accomplishment. So Joe is really good already, but he is really young still.
All right. If I make this statement, I hope it doesn't get me thrown off Birds 365 or any NFL-related show because it's borderline sacrilegious. If I tell you the team that runs the football more effectively is going to win the Super Bowl next Sunday.
Get out.
Go away, Jody.
I know that doesn't play well in NFL circles these days, but I still believe in it. I know someone else who believes in it. Nick Sirianni, by the way. But
he doesn't want to believe in it. He had to believe.
Yeah, he didn't really have a choice.
He succumbed to it and said, "I better turn to a running team here if I want to win some games between now and the end of the season." If I am correct, as blasphemous as that may be, who's going to win the game? Who's got the better running game, Cincinnati or LA, Jeff Kerr?
Well, I think in LA, I mean, for some reason, Sean McVay is in love with Cam Akers and him coming back 5 weeks ago. I don't understand why he doesn't give the ball to Sonny Michel, who got him there in the first place.
He's a genius. Don't question the genius.
Boy wonder.
Genius at work.
I call him the boy wonder, but that's just me. If you were a ball boy for Sean McVay, you're going to get an NFL head coaching job at some point. Or
by the way, we had Randy Mueller on Friday, and Randy made an interesting comparison that I hadn't thought of. So I want to throw this at you, Jeff. He said football's turning into baseball a little bit. Jody will know this. From baseball, went through that where they said, you know what? We why pay all these big name guys all this money to be a manager when we can get a no name guy, pay him less, tell him what to do analytically, fill out the lineup card for him.
Moneyball.
And Moneyball. And they haven't gone that way in the NFL, but they're starting to go that way with the Sean McVay types. And we look at it here. It's Sean McVay, and a Sean McVay acolyte, Zach Taylor, is going to win a Super Bowl. And these are not good head coaches. I'm sorry. They are not. That NFC Championship game was one of the worst coach games I've ever seen in my life. And I like Kyle Shanahan, and he was part of it as well. Is coaching way overvalued in the NFL these days? Have they become the joysticks?
So I've been arguing for years about Sean McVay. I don't know if you guys remember this or not. One of my former colleagues at CBS Sports ranked Sean McVay over Doug Pederson as a head coach. And it was the year after Doug won the Super Bowl. I think it was 2018 when he brought him back with Foles. And he said, Sean McVay would run circles around this guy. I'm like, that's funny because Sean McVay has never beaten this guy, nor he only scored 3 points in the Super Bowl the year after Doug scored 41 with backup quarterback. So,
and by the way, I don't know who this is, Jeff, but I'll just chime in real quick to defend him because the rest of the league agrees with him. But go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what it was. Like he basically had Philadelphia against him, so I felt bad. But I look at it as I think these guys know how to cope. But you're right, John. It just seems like it's the micromanaging stuff where it's the game situations that someone with a sheet can't tell you. It's okay, 4th and 2. We're just gonna go for it at my own 48 because we're gonna go for it. But there's no logic or or merit to it. And they're like, well, the analytics say go for it, or that whole what's that Twitter account? The fourth and was it?
Yeah.
One they'll say this. I'm like, well,
yeah,
that's great, pure tough. But they always seem to forget what happens when your tight end don't block or the guy drops a pass. And I just talked about this with Justin Herbert last week when I had an interview with him. We were talking about the Brandon Staley thing, and he said, he's just different. He just does it. Like there's no
another Sean McVay guy, by the way. The whole league is Sean McVay guys.
Yeah. By the way, here's a funny one for you, John. So when McDaniel got hired, I'm like, well, let's see. Remember the old joke that when Mike Shanahan was coach of Washington, Kyle was the offensive coordinator, and Kyle's buddies. He just took Kyle's buddies were Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, who's the other one? Kevin O'Connell. Yeah. So
he's also going to be a head coach after.
Yeah. They're all head coach. Well, yeah, Kevin O'Connell's going to be a head coach, but it's just kind of funny how it's the McVay tree all of a sudden, and you can't really argue with the two teams in the Super Bowl right now. So it seems like these guys know somewhat about coaching.
Boy, the last time he was in the Super Bowl was one of the worst coach games I've ever seen in a Super Bowl. But he was in the Super Bowl, so what I'm saying to people, and they're like, "You're too hard on this guy. He's been in 2 Super Bowls in 4 years." Well, he was out of his league against Bill Belichick.
He was.
And by the way, Doug Pederson wasn't. To get back to your Pederson versus McVay, he wasn't out of his league. Now, Bill's a better coach, and Doug won the game, but he wasn't out of his league. And then I go back to that NFC Championship game again. I mean, that was a disaster. The only reason Shanahan didn't look like an abject failure is because McVay was worse, but he won the game. So,
that's a better quarterback.
Yeah, he had the better quarterback. Maybe it's personnel over coaching, but it seems to be the NFL thinks it's coaching over personnel as they devalue coaching. It makes no sense.
I'd love to have Justin as my GM. You know what? Forget the first round picks. Forget the second round picks. We don't need to make those picks. I'll hit on these picks. Oh, by the way, speaking of guys who hit on picks later in the draft, Les Snead, he always mentions that. Like Nick Scott was one of those guys. They just, and he said, we just drafted him to be a special teamer. Look at him. He's a contributor on our defense because we develop guys. But, I'd rather have a GM like Les Snead. Like, you know what? Yeah, I'll get Von Miller. He's better than Adrian.
Snead better hit on the late round picks because that's all he's got left with as much as they push the chips into the table on this team. All right, one last former Eagle tie coaching potential move. Mike Kafka might be leaving the Chiefs to go to the Giants. Are the Giants becoming Philadelphia North? They took our assistant general manager. Now they're going to take an ex-Eagle player and make him the offensive coordinator. Kafka was the guy who the Eagles talked to. And there was a whole thing about Andy didn't want to lose him and the like.
2020, the Eagles wanted to talk to Mike Kafka, but they knew Andy would block it, so they didn't bother. They since changed the rules, so but they knew, they were very interested in Mike Kafka, bringing Mike Kafka back. So it's another guy.
How big a loss is that going to be? It's not a loss for the Eagles, but how much can it be a deterrent? Will Kafka go up there and do a good job and make beating the Giants more difficult than it has been the last couple of years?
I think Brian Dable's I think he's a good hire for them. I think Mike Kafka would be a good offensive coordinator for them. Defensive coordinator, I'm not sure. I guess
Schwartz, may the Schwartz be with you. Come on, what are you talking about?
That would be awesome.
North in New Jersey now.
But they fired a Philly guy, though.
The Giants were so bad for so long. They had to hire from their rivals. You know what? Let's see what our rivals are doing. And we're not talking about the Dallas Cowboys because we already went to the Jason Garrett loop here. So, let's try the team that beats us all the time
By the way, Eagles fans, be careful what you wish for if you want
I don't want Jim
with the
Schwartz coaching that defense just because I know that defense is going to be pretty good with Jim
You know that pass rush is coming if Jim Schwartz is there.
He'll be rushing 4 and he'll be playing the sticks and Eagles fans will be mad because Jalen Hurts won't be able to get the ball to the sticks. So.
We shall see.
It's going to be a fun time if Jim Schwartz is the defensive coordinator for the Giants. But I'll tell you what, dude, I like the Brian Dable hire. Like I didn't think they could go wrong with Dable or Flores. I thought both would be interesting hires from that respect. But the Giants seem to be the one team that got the guy they wanted at the end of the day, and I think it's a good hire for him.
The only one who seemed to be confused by the whole thing was Bill Belichick. He kind of got his Brian's mixed up.
How can a micromanager in Bill Belichick screw up a text message? I just want to know that.
I screw them up all the time, Jeff. I get it.
Yeah, that's
Maybe
one of the flies.
Maybe Nike jumped up and sent the text message. The dog.
One of the flies in the ointment of Brian Flores, his whole theory is Bill Belichick, kingmaker, controls all, even other organizations, but he can't get a text right on who's going to be the next coach of the Giants.
By the way,
two things don't seem
my
to equate
biggest
to each other.
argument with this whole head coaching thing, like especially with the minority head coach, the fact that Jim Caldwell was fired for Matt Patricia still irks me. It's been 4 years. It's a shame. What was wrong?
Yeah, but it's independent. You know, you're right, Jim Caldwell, Mike. But Jim Caldwell shouldn't have got fired in Indianapolis. Shouldn't have got fired in Detroit. Certainly, in hindsight, if you look at what happened after him. But here's the thing: it happens all the time. Doug Pederson shouldn't have got fired here. I mean, you know, it happens all the time. You start getting relationships sort of become murky, whether it's GM versus coach. We see it all the time. It's politics. So it's not just Jim Caldwell, that I will say.
Yeah, I'm hoping Eric Bieniemy gets hired. I mean, I don't know what the Saints situation is right now. It doesn't seem like they have a situation, but I'm hoping Eric Bieniemy does get hired. I think he's
well. I will say this: things took a drastic turn when that lawsuit was filed because Lovie Smith wasn't in the Houston conversation, and all of a sudden he's going to be the head coach in Houston.
What is Lovie Smith like? 8-19 in his last 27 games.
Oh, he's got a great gray beard. I mean,
he does. I love it.
Yeah.
I love Lovie. I do love Lovie Smith, but he does not deserve to be a head coach anymore.
Jeff Kerr, have a great Super Bowl week. We'll get you on in the upcoming weeks back here on Birds 365. Thanks for hopping on. Enjoy the week, bud.
That sounds great. I hope you guys don't have to talk about Jalen Hurts getting traded for Russell Wilson anytime soon.
No, like every day for the next however many months leading up to the draft. Bank on it. Jeff, thanks, bud. That is Jeff Kerr from CBSSports.com. Does hosting duties here with us. Always good to catch up and talk NFL with Mr. Kerr. McMullen and McDonald, your Mac and Mac guys here on Bird 365. Come back. We got a couple more things to touch down on. Got a good guest coming up next hour as well. Mike Tanier from Football Outsiders going to join us here on Birds 365.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
You know you like being right. That's why you should enroll in an Independence Blue Cross plan. It's the health plan chosen by more people than any other. With more doctors and hospitals, more benefits that really rock, more of the coverage you want for the right price, including free doctor visits 24/7. It's a choice you can feel good about. Because when you're right, you're right. And when you've got Independence Blue Cross, you're right where you need to be. Call 1-844-200-2583 today to get an Independence Blue Cross plan.
field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Got your Mag guys here on Bird 365. John McMullen and Jody McDonald. We thank Jeff Kerr for hopping on board. Mike Tanier's Football Outsider is going to join us about 15, 18 minutes from now. J-Mac, we touched on the bases we needed to early in the show here. Eagle guys coming, going, staying, coaching, front office, and the like. We haven't. We're an hour and 5 minutes into the show. We haven't brought up what I think is the most embarrassing thing about the National Football League. And I'm not talking about their lack of minority hiring as head coaches. I'm talking about the Pro Bowl. Did you watch any of it yesterday?
Not minute one. I got in some kind of Harlan Coben rabbit hole on Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Harlan Coben fan as an author. I've watched some of his shows as well on Netflix, and they're good too. I'm just a bigger fan of his printed work than his television work. I'm not downing his television work at all. I think it's phenomenal, but I became a fan of his via his books first. So I feel almost like I'm cheating on Harlan Coben, the writer, when I watch Harlan.
I think he's
Coben,
fine.
the TV
I think
producer.
he's fine if you watch the shows. Harlan, I think he follows me on Twitter. He's a Jersey guy.
Oh, I've had him on as a guest twice.
Oh, have you?
On my shows.
We should try to get him on the show. Yeah, does a great job. What's interesting to me is for people who are a fan, whether they're a fan of his writing or his Netflix shows, it's like he does there a lot of European shows. So
Yes.
they rework it. You know, there's a lot of English ones. There's a French one. There's an Italian one. I think there's a Polish. It's interesting to me. I'd like to discuss with him, you know, how his writing, because obviously he's a Jersey guy. I assume the books. Now you read the books. Maybe I'll just ask you. I assume they're set here. And
when
then
you stay here
in the United States.
Oh, yes. Oh, well, every once in a while, some of his characters go abroad, but they are all based here and start here. Here being, you're right, Jersey, but more North Jersey. If this is kind of a Philly-based show, we're on YouTube, so it's supposed to have national appeal, but it's about the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
We do call it Birds 365, which you and I are both South Jersey guys. Harlan's a North Jersey guy. He's a Jersey guy, but he's a North Jersey guy more than a South Jersey guy. But yes, his stories where his writing is taking him and his ability to translate into television work is based in the United States. Yes, to answer your question. All right, we got off on I need to get back to the Pro Bowl. You did not suffer watching the Pro Bowl yesterday. I tuned in. I was on 3 o'clock. I forgot what I was doing right around 3
I did see how many fumbles and interceptions.
I happened to tune in at about 3:15, I guess it was, and I forgot it started right at 3. For the 4 minutes that I watched, the AFC scored a touchdown to make it 14-7. It was 4 minutes and 10 seconds into the game. It was already 14-7. I said, I missed 2 touchdowns. I tuned in. They were 3 minutes into the game, and I'd missed 2 touchdowns. I said, what the hell? So I had to go back and look. I wasn't going to go back and watch the video again. But I said, let me at least look it up. Picked off pass for a touchdown, quick touchdown. I didn't even realize they were going to play with these fakakta rules that you get to pick where you take the ball. They're going to place the ball down, and then you decide, do you want it or do you want to play defense? It was ridiculous, Johnny Mac. Yeah, I know they want to do things differently. I know they want to be creative. I know they want to give you a different experience. Well, I'll tell you what, my experience sucked yesterday watching the Pro Bowl, and I completely gave up on it. I would tune back in about every 40 minutes. Oh, by the way, the Sixers started at 3:30 in a big game against the Bulls. Just one man's position. Yeah, I watched the more important sporting event, the Sixers game. I'd put on the Pro Bowl during the commercials of the Sixers games and then go right back to basketball again. I know it's going to do nice television numbers. It'll probably end up being the number one watched sporting event from this past weekend.
Which is amazing, but you're right.
Boggles my mind. It was ridiculous. It was ludicrous. I'm a diehard football guy too. I'm a basketball guy, but I'm a football guy first. Are you kidding me? What was it that they put together yesterday in Vegas?
Yeah, it's been that way. It's tough for me to watch any All-Star game, but particularly the Pro Bowl, which has gotten, and they try. I mean, they try ideas. One thing, you mentioned the stupid rules, and I don't know what rules. They started that a couple years ago, where they try out rules in the Pro Bowl. So I don't have a problem with that. I mean, all right, why not try it out? But yeah, that sounds pretty stupid. They put the ball. They don't tell them they don't tell them where the ball's going to be, and then you get to play offense or defense.
Yeah, the team gets who's ever turnited got to dictate where the ball was going to be placed, and then the other team got to choose: do you want the ball or do you want to play defense from where the ball is put down?
Yeah, the game of football is not. I think I said this last week. It's not designed to be played in an all-star format because it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous to play the game of football.
Oh, they took the danger out of it, John. You didn't watch any of it. It was touch.
Yeah,
there was no tackling. Yeah. No tackling whatsoever. Two-hand touch.
And
they should have put flags on him. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and they might as well. I've argued for years because the honor of making the Pro Bowl matters to the players. I for a lot of reasons. One, reputation, but also contract wise. I mean, they still tie these contract incentives to Pro Bowls, and maybe they should just make it the all pro team or whatever. But I've always argued, keep the honor, lose the game. In other words, name Pro Bowlers, but don't play the game. It's meaningless. Have all the other stuff. Maybe play flag football. Do the stuff on Saturday night, like the NBA 3-point shootout. They started that with the skills competition, all that. Do all that kind of stuff. Have a party. Have fun. But lose the game. Lose it or change it up or play flag football. Do something. It's just a chance for people to have fun. And as I said, the kids to see the stars all playing together, the different helmets and all that kind of cool stuff. But yeah, the game itself is just a disaster.
And I watched. And
by the way, Patrick Mahomes can't play football anymore. I'm just looking at the box score. God, he was awful.
Again, I didn't watch enough of it to have full commentary on it. I watched it more than you did. I did check the box score myself afterwards.
So was Russell Wilson, by the way. Russell was awful.
Hargrove had a sack. How did he get a sack? There was no sacking. It was half-hearted pass rushing. The quarterback got rid of football. How did he register a sack in the game? He got 3 tackles, which tackles meant here. This is a tackle. Get both hands on the guy. That's how you get a tackle. But he got a sack, too, while he was at it. I don't even know to be excited for the Eagle players that were on the Pro Bowl team. I'm sure they enjoyed themselves out in Vegas.
Well, I'm just looking at the box score, Jody. According to the box score, there were 7 sacks in the game. 7. Micah Parsons got 1. Hargrave got 1. Brian Burns got 2 for the NFC. Max Crosby, we're just talking about, got 2 for the AFC. TJ Watt got 1. 7 sacks in the game.
It was ridiculous. And yeah,
so I guess they pulled the flag off.
But it was 41-35. We talked about how Joe Burrow won, despite the fact that he was sacked 9 times. They scored 76 points despite the fact that there were 7 sacks.
Speaking of the running game, Jody, the NFC ran for 1 yard. It's 1 yard. One total yard.
It was not NFL football, and it's a joke, and it has to stop right now. I'm sure that the Eagles that were out there and got to participate in this, I don't have nerve enough to call it a scrimmage. This exhibition, whatever it wasn't a football game. Had a good time, and I'm glad for them that they got out there, and I'm glad for them that they didn't get out of control. That apparently the same way Alvin Kamara did.
Yeah.
So not sure that Vegas is the greatest.
Maybe they should go back to Orlando. Yeah.
No. If you're gonna go anywhere, go back to Hawaii.
I agree, but they don't want to go to Hawaii. So,
why is that? Why do you think they don't want to go to Hawaii?
Well, I don't think enough people can travel there. So you're limited as far as when they would put the game in the Hula Bowl for all those years, it would not sell out, and that's a big thing for the NFL. I don't know how many people were there. Was there a lot of people there? But I think it's easier to get people to go to Orlando or obviously Vegas.
No, you can pay for any stadium you want with discounted / free tickets if they're worried about how it's going to look on TV. And oh, by the way, I didn't watch it much on TV because it was a travesty of an attempt at an exhibition because it sure as hell wasn't a game. So, yes, I did watch sparse minutes of the Pro Bowl. What I was certainly more concentrated on was the Senior Bowl. And Johnny Mac, I got to tell you, I watched some practice time. We talked about it last week here on Birds 365, but then I watched the game on Saturday. The Eagles have 3 first-round draft picks. They've got 10 picks in the upcoming draft. Going to be a big draft for the Eagles. Don't know if they're going to keep all 3, but as of right now, they're scheduled to have 3 mid-first-round picks. In what I saw over the couple of days leading up to it in practice and in the game again on Saturday, Howie Roseman is going to love this draft because the quality of the draft is in the trenches.
It's what he loves. Get me an edge rusher. That's what Howie Roseman is saying.
And there are edge rushers to be had, but the kid who won the MVP was unbelievable. Defensive tackle. I'm not sure the Eagles are going to go DT. They'd have to go with a fairly high pick. I think he probably is going to be gone. But this kid, Perrion Winfrey from Oklahoma, he was far and away the best player on the field. They rightfully gave him the MVP award, but he was dominant in practice during the week and then during the game as well. Would the Eagles think about taking a defensive tackle with one of those 2 first? If they end up keeping the first 2 picks and trade the third or keep one, would they use it on a defensive tackle?
I mean, it's always about the position and the spot. I think they would probably, if that were the best player on their board, and it always is dependent on the individual player, but I would think the position they wouldn't be as concerned with. You mentioned Devon Hargrave. They just drafted Milton Williams, who they like a lot as a player, and Fletcher's going to be back. So, how much. But everything is so fluid in the NFL. Fletcher's not going to be here for a lengthy period of time. Milton is supposed to be. Javon's is supposed to be. So I wouldn't say it's a position of need. So they might start thinking about trading back. I think the best probably of the Senior Bowl hype, the best thing that helped the Eagles was probably Malik Willis and the fact that he seems to be pushing up boards. I think that's good for the Eagles because they want to create interest for teams that are desperate for quarterbacks to try to trade down or out or try to flip one of these picks over. But if they love the kid, sure, why not? I still think heavily lean towards edge rusher and cornerback before defensive tackle.
And along those same lines, yes, I understand their love for the trenches, but right now on this team, I see a bigger need outside than inside. But I'm telling you, the best player was this defensive tackle from Oklahoma. Same thing on the offensive line. The kid from Boston College, Zion Johnson, was just stone cold dominant. I know the Eagles don't need help inside unless you got inside information that says Jason Kelce is retiring. Zion Johnson stayed late in practices during the week to work out with the coaches to work on becoming a center. Didn't do it at all during the year at Boston College. They didn't need him at center. He was the best guard in the country. They just left him there. But he did this week prove that he had offensive line flexibility. I'm telling you, this kid's a stud. If, again, the Eagles are sitting there and he's far and away the highest rated guy on their board, are they going to go interior offensive line with their first draft pick this year?
Well, that would never surprise me, as you know. I mean, they just believe in the offensive line. And you're right with Jason Kelce. Jason Kelce, interestingly, was on WIP recently, and he said didn't say he was coming back, but he said, as long as I could be the player I want to be, the leader I want to be, something of that nature, he'll be back. So I would say it's, probably 80-20 he's going to be back. But, I mean, we're talking about 1 year increments here. So they need a long-term plan. Problem is they're so deep in the interior offensive line right now.
Right.
Now, the Nate Herbigs of the world don't have the ceilings of the Zion Johnsons of the world. So, yes, they are always interested in offensive linemen. But again, if we're doing this in a betting sort of mentality, I think that's down the list. But if they like a player on offensive or defensive line, they will take that player. They will take that player because that's what they believe in building their team on. And they've been right for the most part.
They've been pretty staunch about it, is the reason that I brought it up. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. All right, coming back. We've got a guy who covers the entire National Football League. We'll get his slant on some Philly stuff, but we do have a Super Bowl coming up on Sunday, and the NFL's got issues that it's dealing with right now that are bigger than the Eagles, even bigger than the Super Bowl. Mike Tanier from Football Outsiders going to join us next here on Birds 365.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
You know you like being right. That's why you should enroll in an Independence Blue Cross plan. It's the health plan chosen by more people than any other, with more doctors and hospitals, more benefits that really rock, more of the coverage you want for the right price, including free doctor visits 24/7. It's a choice you can feel good about, because when you're right, you're right. And when you've got Independence Blue Cross, you're right where you need to be. Call 1-844-200-2583 today to get an Independence Blue Cross plan.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
It is a Super Monday here on Birds 365. Super Bowl week underway. That is just one of the topics we're going to talk about with our next guest. Believe it's second time. We've had Mike on before.
Oh, yeah. We've
from
had Mike a couple times, I think.
Maybe his third appearance. From Football Outsiders, the man with the best beard of the three of us. And we all work on it, but sorry, we pale in comparison to Mike Tanier's of Football Outsider. How you been, Mike?
I am practically a friend of the podcast I've been on so many times. I can't believe you guys are saying one time, two times. and I love the Ocean Casino Resorts backdrops. I take it that's not live right now, is it?
That is live. It is live. It is live. Yeah, it's at least 2 times. Maybe it is 3 times. But yeah, we've had Mike on. But Jody's got so many shows, everything runs together.
That might be Jody's show a few times too. That's it.
All right, Mike, let's start with the Houston Texans, only because I want to get it out of the way. I mean, look, we are where we are in the NFL. The hiring cycle's been a disaster from a minority hiring standpoint. All of a sudden, Brian Flores, some serious allegations against the league. And then out of left field, here comes Lovie Smith and the Houston Texans. Now, Houston saying, oh, he was always involved. Are you buying that at all?
No, I'd love to believe it. But we spent weeks hearing about Gannon. We spent weeks hearing about Josh McCown, et cetera, et cetera. And as I posted on Twitter recently, you can hear the wheels clicking. You could hear the wheels in Houston all these weeks saying, oh, we're looking for our opportunity to do whatever goofy thing we were doing. And now Brian Flores lawsuit drops. There's much more attention, much more scrutiny on minority hires. We just fired a coach of color. We don't have any coaches of color in our interview queue. Let's promote our defensive coordinator. And you hate to think like that. You hate that to be that way. But we see the way Houston has operated for the last year. They do not operate as a professional organization. It's a lemonade stand. It's the Bluth banana stand out there. And so they sort of do Looney Tunes stuff like this. And it's a shame because I would have loved Lovie to have worked through a normal cycle and have earned another opportunity, not kind of be like the default choice, which I feel this is what it is.
And we talked about Jonathan Gannon earlier in the show. I suggested that not only is he okay because he's as young as he is and well thought he is, he's 1 year a coordinator and he's already getting head coaching interviews. That's pretty good placement, even if you don't get the job. And oh, by the way, is it a job you really want? That's a team that's in disarray. Sometimes you get on the carousel, you get the gig, you never get another ride. I actually think it's a plus that Gannon's staying right here in Philadelphia.
It'll probably it's a plus for the Eagles, plus for him in the long run. You know, usually during the cycle, we say it's one job out of 32, so you take it. And we've seen the old days of the Raiders when Al Davis was getting older and wasn't really, all the way there. It's still one job out of 32. I don't consider the Houston Texans at this point one job out of 32. Oof. They are so poorly managed. You know that you're going into this weird situation where there's a, Svengali working in the wings doing all this loopy stuff. If you decide you want it, fine. But if you say, I'm just going to wait for the next boat to show up, that's probably a good idea as well.
Well, speaking of the next boat up, it might be Jacksonville, Mike. Not quite as bad as Houston, but I don't know if we want to call that one of 32 either.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you're getting Trevor Lawrence, and that's the situation Doug Pederson landed in.
Right.
Not their first choice, no matter what they want to say.
Right.
But he wasn't the first choice here in Philadelphia in 2016. Look how that worked out. Did Doug parachute into a great situation simply because of Trevor Lawrence?
I think so, to a degree that he's going to be welcomed as a savior in the locker room there beyond Trevor Lawrence. So he's going to help Trevor Lawrence. All the other guys are going to be like, oh, a coach who doesn't scream at us and kick us during practice, who's kind of pleasant and like straightforward and super professional and player first. He's going to be a rock star among the players there. And it's Doug. He's going to bring in good coaches. He's going to be able to go out there and grab coaches from other staffs and bring them in. And somebody else going into Jacksonville might not have been in that situation. One more thing he's got going for him is, they've got cap space there. They do have Lawrence. They've got EDN coming back. They can work their way up to 8 or 9 wins real fast. There's enough talent hanging around there that if you don't just actively screw the pooch the way Urban Meyer did, you can get to 8 or 9 wins. Now, I don't know if Doug gets the next step, but right there, that's an accomplishment that's going to make him sort of the hero of Jacksonville. It's a good position for him to be in.
Mike, we got to get your read, and we've kind of danced around it, but want to jump into the deep end of the pool here on the lawsuit that was leveled against the National Football League. You already kind of touched on it, that first immediate response was without merit, and now several days later, Roger Goodell in his State of the Union saying, oh, we've got a lot of work to do, and it's embarrassing, and we've got to be better, and the like. Do you think this lawsuit has a chance to go the distance? Certainly, you can read into that with the fact that my opinion stated here on Bird 365 and everywhere else this past week is Flores is putting his coaching career at peril because I know he's still a quote unquote finalist for the Texans. Yeah, John pointed out, probably going to Lovey. I don't know when if he's ever going to get another coaching gig in the NFL. You kind of sue the whole league and the 32 teams. You're putting your future at risk,
right?
Which means it's a money thing, but it also is he's trying to make a point thing,
right?
What direction is this lawsuit going in from here?
I mean, my whole take on this is I believe, the racism, the hiring practices, and the implicit bias in the NFL, I believe they're real. I believe they've been real for years. I believe they're fairly obvious. What Brian Flores has said in his lawsuit, I believe that most of that is true. Like, all that stuff sounds plausible. I'm not sure Ross brought him in and said, hey, here's money if you lose games. It was probably couched a little bit more as a nod, wink, wink. But I believe Brian Flores. I don't think B proves A. I don't think B equals A. I don't think saying I got a weird text and I had a weird meeting with the owner is enough to prove or put like the preponderance of evidence that this is the smoking gun against the NFL. I wish that there was. I wish that was going to be the case. I have a feeling this isn't a lawsuit with legs. I have a feeling this is going to be kind of a shot fired against the bow of a battleship. And it's going to end with a settlement, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to talk a lot about it, and not a lot's going to get done, at least directly from this lawsuit. Wish it was differently, but that's the way I think this is going to proceed.
Mike, and I promise I get to the game after this, but last one from me, just because I want to throw this out there and get your thoughts on it, because you're a bright guy. I got a lot of respect for it. One of my issues with this whole thing is I don't think people are directed in the right place. In that, I always tell Jody, Roger Goodell is very popular amongst the NFL owners because he's a lightning rod, because he takes the hits they don't want to take. Right. So I think a lot of the critics of this league look at the NFL and say the NFL is not hiring minorities, which is the case. Yeah. But they're one of 32 entities. They're each individual ownership, and they look at Roger Goodell and they think Roger Goodell can pick up the phone and say, hey, guys, hire some minorities, consider some minorities. He can't.
Right.
He can't.
Yeah.
So until you identify the problem, how do you solve the problem? I don't think critics have identified the problem.
There's a naivete with the way we approach this stuff, where we look for this mustache twirling, Red Skull villain in the background. Saying,
Bond villain. I called it a Bond villain.
A Bond villain in the corner saying, yeah, this is my master plan. And it's not. It's a bunch of owners, most of whom are older white dudes who's like, hey, that dude reminds me of my clever nephew and Sean McVay, so I'm hiring him. And it's an implicit bias. And it's pervasive throughout society. It is.
Yeah.
And, Goodell would like that to change, but he only has so much power, as you said. So, we have to look at, some of these things like the adjustments they made to the Rooney Rule. Hey, you get a third-round pick now. We need to look at colleges. The NCAA can do whatever they want. You can say, oh, well, we haven't had a offensive coordinator, defense coordinator color in 75 years at this college, and there's no accountability for that. The pipeline needs to increase. So, I mean, you hold the people at the top accountable, you do, but you don't approach it with this naivete where you say, oh, racist hiring practices, lawsuit, Goodell's the bad guy. Let me write a think piece about it, stick it on my blog, and now I'm a crusader for good. It's more nuanced for that. We need to be a little bit more nimble when we talk about these things.
Agreed. All right, let's take it on to the field. We will play Super Bowl 56 coming up on Sunday, the Rams against the Bengals. The Los Angeles Rams, not the St. Louis Rams, which means two teams that have never won a Super Bowl before. The Bengals haven't, and the Rams haven't won one in L.A., so we're going to get a new champion. That's a good thing. And, Mike, one thing I continue to point out and have since the two teams qualified for this big game, they got there in two different ways. Cincinnati's been a build through the draft guy. Now, having high picks like number 1 with Burrow and number 5 with Jamar Chase certainly helped. But the T. Higgins of the world, their kicker in the 5th round, they've done a really good job giving this roster its base with its draft. Right. Added a free agent here, there, defensive line, short-term, mega buck type contracts. They were built from within organization. The Rams, on the other hand, said, we got a couple of pieces, but we got to go well. And they put up all that they had to get Jalen Ramsey and then Matthew Stafford and in-season Von Miller Yes, OBJ wasn't a give up the future type thing, but they brought in someone else from another organization, and give McVay credit, he's made it all work. If the NFL is a copycat league, will the winner of this game be the copycat winner as well? That everyone, if the Bengals win, we got to build it through the draft. If the Rams win it, we got to sacrifice our draft picks to trade for guys who can jump in immediately. How much of an impact is this game going to have on the way the other teams in the NFL look at roster building?
My guess in the short term is the copycat is going to be the Rams. For one important reason, there's not a superstar quarterback in this draft that you can plug and play. So in the short term, you say, we're going to do what the Bengals do. We're going to go to the draft and we're going to get Malik Willis looks pretty good. Kenny Pickett looks pretty good. None of these guys are Joe Burrow level prospects. There's no Jamar Chase level receiver, although there's a lot of good receivers. If you go into the trade world and say, we need to get our Matthew Stafford, Russell Wilson might be there. Deshaun Watson might be there. Aaron Rodgers might be there. There's some of these like second tier guys you could talk yourself into. Garoppolo's there. You could do that. So I think in the short term, there's a lot of teams that are going to say, we can upgrade now and go that route. But in the long term, I think we know in the NFL, draft and develop always wins, except that it takes time, it takes patience, it takes a lot of vision, and only a handful of teams are able to execute that over the course of multiple years.
Mike, I want to kind of frame this through an Eagles lens in that I was just tallying this up the other day. Before the Eagles lost Ian Cunningham and Brandon Brown, their scouting staff was 19 deep. 19 deep, wow. And that doesn't even include Howie Roseman and Catherine Raish, who run the show. So it's over 20. So I'm reading Peter King this morning. The Bengals have a scouting staff of 6. Oh. 6. Now, and you're putting up 2. It's probably more like 2.
Yeah.
Is this one of the greatest accomplishments in NFL history to bring a Mike Brown finance team into the Super Bowl?
There's a lot of smoke and mirrors with the Bengals. You the three of us would have picked Joe Barrow, and the three of us either Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell.
They made a lot of good free agent decisions this year,
right?
Especially on defense.
They have made some good free agent decisions there. It is shocking that they got this far. It is a sort of an accomplishment of the organization. Credit to those 6 scouts doing the work of 3 people each. But this is a team that had the 30th hardest schedule, the 3rd easiest schedule in the NFL this year. They come in as a wild card. They get a couple of upsets along the way. I would worry about like getting too carried away with saying, we have to copy the Bengals method. I don't think the Bengals method, yes, draft and develop is copyable, et cetera. But the idea, like, let's structure things like the Bengals, et cetera, that's the thing that I think teams have to look at and say, no, they got some breaks along the way. They got lightning in the bottle. They got the right guys a few times. And we want to do that, but we also want to do things, we want to spend a little more money in our scouting department, et cetera.
It is amazing.
On a shoestring for about 5 decades now.
Yes.
So why should a thing like that change for Cincinnati? The results are changing, but their way of going about it not changing anytime soon. Do want to follow up on a name you threw out there because it's one that I have lost my way with. I have believed all season long that Aaron Rodgers was in his last year in Green Bay, that he was going to be walking away at the end of the year. And then all of a sudden he started saying nice things about the general manager. Yes. And they've got the best record in the National Football League. And I changed my opinion. I said, now I believe it's more likely that he stays. Then they get bounced in their first playoff game. And I once again have no idea what the hell's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Understood it's fluid, not going to hold you to it today here. This has to be your last stance or statement ever on Aaron Rodgers. But as we sit here today, what's going to happen with him?
I have a feeling we're going to know soon whether Davante Adams gets franchised. Once they franchise tag Davante Adams, which will be a good move, and also a move to keep Aaron Rodgers happy, then they've got to figure out how to get cap compliant. So they're going to have to move money around. They might have to tell some guys free agency to go. Aaron Rodgers is either going to love all of that or he's going to hate all that. And I'll tell you right now, Aaron Rodgers doesn't believe that the salary cap is real. He doesn't believe COVID's real. He doesn't think the salary cap is real. So if one of his guys has to go out the door and it's like, well, it's to pay you, Aaron, it's to pay Devontae, it's to pay the courts. Yeah, we can't keep Robert Tonyan, even though he's your guy at tight end. Then we might hear the different side of Aaron Rodgers and the rumors will start again about his unhappiness. But for right now, the very fickle Aaron Rodgers does sound relatively content, and it's trending towards him staying.
All right, Mike, I want to go back to coaching, but coaching in the frame of the Super Bowl because it's Sean McVay and Sean McVay light. And I don't know. The NFC Championship game, I don't know how you felt, but I didn't think that was a well-coached game. Last time Sean McVay was in the Super Bowl was not a well-coached game. And I feel funny saying this because the guy's in NFC Championship games and he's in Super Bowls. So you got to give him credit for something.
Yeah.
But you know how this league is, and Kevin O'Connell's going to get the Minnesota job after the Super Bowl. Zach Taylor, Brandon Staley. What about is coaching overvalued in the NFL now? Is it going the way of baseball in when they scaled back and went to more of let's look at Football Outsiders and do what they tell us to do in the football realm, and then the analytics realm, obviously in baseball?
I think some of that super situational stuff, like what did you do on fourth down? What did you do here? What do you do there? Some of that gets a little overvalued because we talk about it and it becomes the trending topic on the social network, et cetera, et cetera. It's important, but you see Kyle Shanahan make mistakes on fourth down, kind of gets away with it until the end. You see Sean McVay like burn the timeout. We watched Andy Reid burn timeouts for 15, 20 years and still be successful. We saw all kinds of mistakes. I think the longitudinal, what you're doing during mini camp, what you're doing during OTAs, what you're doing during training camp, where you're developing guys, where you're keeping guys on the same page, where they're prepared to play, that element of coaching remains unbelievably important. And I think you see some of these guys are outstanding. McVay's outstanding at keeping that superstar-laden roster happy, focused, going in the same direction, going out there ready to play, have a game plan to get Cooper Kupp open, etc. He does all that stuff very well. Shanahan does all that stuff very well. Andy Reid did that stuff very well for years. That's the part that matters. It's hard to quantify. It's hard to like have a hot take about on Monday morning. He blew that call. But I think those are the things that matter. And some of the things that we really talk about are somewhat overstated.
All right. Let's put on the thinking cap for the way that you are mentally prepared for this game. I know a lot of people want to have it break down to the numbers and compare who got sacked versus key blocks and the analytical approach. But I want to talk about the mental approach to this game because we've seen so many examples in the Super Bowl of the team that prepared correctly walking away. The team that was overly nervous ended up losing the game. We can go all the way back to Dick Vermeil against the Raiders back in 1980, where Vermeil admitted afterwards, yeah, I had them wound tight, and we played like a tight team in the Super Bowl, and the Raiders were out on Bourbon Street all week long getting ready for the game, and it worked for them. Different strokes for different folks. Which team is the better, do you think, potentially, because we won't know until it happens on Sunday, mentally prepared team? Is it a McVay coach team? Is it a Taylor coach team? Is it a team that's been there before? A lot of Rams players on this team just 4 years ago. Bengals, almost no Super Bowl experience. Right. If you had to guess and gauge the preparation leading up to kickoff on Sunday, which team do you like better?
You have to assume that McVay and the veterans in that locker room have memories of how it went down against the Patriots and have a better plan for approaching this week than the Bengals. I think that works very far in the background, particularly this year. You're talking about Bourbon Street years ago. Now we're talking about teams that are not flying in until I believe they're flying in on Tuesday now.
Yeah.
The structure of the way teams do things now, it's like you're going to be sequestered in the hotel, et cetera, et cetera. There's the overlay of COVID that's going to prevent guys from going out. Like the Rams, like we're near home, we can go out. That kind of thing is probably going to be very minimized. So the team that's not traveling, the team that has more experience, I think that works in the background for the Rams. That said, I think the Rams are the better team overall anyway, so I don't even know how much juice that adds on top of things.
All right, Mike, I know we got a hard out at 45. So footballoutsiders.com, Mike Tanier. You could read him in New York Times as well. Mike, who's going to win the Super Bowl?
I think these teams are similar. They both like to spread the field. They like to throw deep. They both got a great number one receiver. They both got a great number one cornerback, but the Rams are better. The Rams are just better during the regular season. If you stack them up player for player, for the most part, they're going to win that. So I'm leaning on the Rams.
Yeah, they're not surprised for Mr. Football Outsiders. Mike, great stuff. Good to catch up again. Oh, we will have you back again.
Please.
And we expect your beard to still be better than either of ours.
Yes.
You're doing an outstanding job with that, like you did giving us insight in the NFL today. Thanks, bud.
Always a pleasure. Take care. Enjoy your week, guys.
You got
Thanks,
it.
Mike.
That is Mike Tanier from Football Outsiders here with us on Birds 365. All right, J-Mac and J-Mac still got plenty to cover. 15 solid minutes left with you here on Birds 365. Come on back.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
You know you like being right. That's why you should enroll in an Independence Blue Cross plan. It's the health plan chosen by more people than any other, with more doctors and hospitals, more benefits that really rock, more of the coverage you want for the right price, including free doctor visits 24/7. It's a choice you can feel good about, because when you're right, you're right. And when you've got Independence Blue Cross, you're right where you need to be. Call 1-844-200-2583 today to get an Independence Blue Cross plan.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Mac guys, coming down the home stretch on a football Monday, which, by the way, in case you didn't know, and we hope you do, we will have tomorrow's show here on Birds 365 be our last one from the week. The channel itself is taking some downtime around the Super Bowl. We'll be off the next 3 days after tomorrow and a couple of days starting next week. So hope you enjoy the Super Bowl, everybody. We'll certainly have a good show for you tomorrow, helping to prep for it. And along those lines, John, I want to combine two things that we talked about here today on the show, the Super Bowl and coaching movement in the National Football League. I had a chance to get Wade Phillips on my show yesterday on CBS Sports Radio. I thought he'd be a really good get because he, of course, was part of that Ram staff 4 years ago that went to the Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator. So he worked for Sean McVay and he worked with Zach Taylor. So I wanted to get the chance to compare and contrast those two guys through the eyes of a fellow coach. And I knew that he was let go by the Rams. They didn't renew his contract after a couple of years. So I thought maybe I can get an honest opinion. He's not a Ram devotee. And he may actually say Zach Taylor's got a chance to be just as good as coach. I forgot one thing. And shame on me for this. His son, Wes
Rams,
is still on the Rams staff.
Yeah, he's going to be an offensive coordinator. See, I think he's going to be Kevin O'Connell's offensive coordinator, but we'll see when he gets the Minnesota job. So he's going to be close to taking over the family business.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe if they're that impressed with him in Los Angeles, maybe they offer him the job as offensive coordinator with the Rams to stay put. So as he doesn't join O'Connell in Minnesota. But I had completely forgotten that Wes was part of that staff. But even when I thought of it, I said, yeah, but they still pushed Wade out the door. They told him, thank you very much for your contribution, but we're going to go another direction for defense coordinator. So I thought maybe, just maybe, oh, no, he's a blatant Rams guy. He is so much in his son's corner. It's ridiculous. He's rooting for him. He's going to the game, having a great time. We'll be there at the Super Bowl this way. Yeah, he is an uber Rams guy. He said some nice things about Zach Taylor, but he blatantly, you could tell, will be rooting for the Rams. He didn't attempt to be objective in the interview that I did with him and talking about his.
I mean, I think, isn't Wade's Twitter, I think, son of bum?
Son of bum, exactly right, bum. Yes.
So what is Wes going to do? Son of bum, grandson of bum, who knows? Yeah, I mean, that family has been legendary around the NFL. I mean, Wade's got to be 70. He's over 70. So.
50 years coaching.
Yeah, 50,
from 50. High school to college.
We talk about experience.
NFL. So he's, in his 70s, might be sneaking up on the 80s.
Boy, he was the defensive coordinator here in the 80s, probably.
Like Coach Reggie White.
Yeah, probably late.
Yeah,
80s.
I saw this stat. I'm just throwing it. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Guys that he's coached that have won Defensive Player of the Year: Reggie White, J.T. Watt, Aaron Donald.
Did you ask him about Aaron?
I asked him who's the greatest defensive player he ever coached, and he said, "Believe it or not, this will go over well with the crew we have here." He said Reggie White had the greatest year of any player because it was Defensive Player of the Year. I ran down 5 guys that he had, and there was one. Oh shoot, I can't remember what it was. Bryce Pop.
Bryce Pop had a great year.
He did
a great year,
but he's not Reggie White or Aaron Donald or J.T. Watt or who else am I forgetting? Oh, Bruce Smith. They had Bruce Smith in Buffalo. So you're talking about Hall of Fame, all-time great defensive players. Yeah, Bryce Pop, not quite in that group, but he had that type of a year to win Defensive Player of the Year. So I specifically asked him a specific way.
Well, he had Von Miller too, I think. He had Von Miller.
Right, as well. I didn't get him to answer the question the way I wanted him to. I asked him who was the greatest defensive player he ever coached. He said, well, Reggie White had the greatest year I ever coached. So he went to an Eagle guy, so it wasn't a bad thing, but I wanted him to make an evaluation of comparing all-time great defensive players. He coached them all. He just went narrow focus to the one year he had with Reggie White when he had the 20-plus sacks here in 12 games for the Philadelphia Eagles, a record that'll never be broken again.
Yeah, generally when I've asked people, they usually come down to Reggie or Lawrence Taylor, unless you get a little bit older. Some of the older guys will get to Deacon Jones and players like that. But Wade would be a great person to ask. I kind of want to know where he puts Aaron Donald in the pantheon because he's playing right now. And he's one of those guys who I say it all the time, his peers are in awe of him. That's when I take notice. When your peers say how good you are, and obviously Reggie is that type of player, Lawrence Taylor. Somebody put a clip of Lawrence Taylor up, just highlights over the weekend on Twitter. You forget. I mean, that guy was just it. And by the way, they'd all be penalties today. He was that's back when intimidation was part of the game. And Bruce Smith is also who you mentioned. It's sort of Reggie, Lawrence Taylor, and Bruce Smith in that sort of era of football. And he had them all except for Lawrence.
He touched down on a lot of bases with all-time great players. Yeah, never with the Giants with Lawrence Taylor. But I did make him laugh because as I ran down those list of guys that he had who were defensive players of the year on his teams that he captained on the defensive side, he goes, yeah, all Hall of Famers. And I said, so you're telling me, Coach, you feel pretty strong about Aaron Donald making the Hall of Fame? He just laughed out loud. If it were an on video show like this, he would have laughed in my face. It was just on the radio. He goes, Yeah, Joe, that's exactly what I'm telling you. I'm telling you Aaron Donald's going to the Hall of Fame. You don't agree with me on that one? I said, no, I asked the question, Coach. I was just making sure you were sure. He goes, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to the Hall of Fame. So, yes, Wade Phillips has coached some of the greatest defensive talent in the history of the National Football League. It all doesn't matter. I asked him, how'd you let your son go over to the dark side? Bum was all about defense. You were all about defense. How the hell do you let him become an offensive coach? He said, well, he's a quarterback in college. Nothing I can do about that. And then he gravitated that way. So as a linebacker coach / passing game coordinator, and if you believe passing game coordinators have a big influence on putting in game plans during the week, yes, Wes Phillips of the Rams could have something to say about the outcome of the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, he's an important part of that offensive coaching staff. And obviously, he's third on the sort of list behind Sean McVay, as I mentioned, and Kevin O'Connell is going to be a head coach after the Super Bowl. So that means, there's a good chance that if they don't allow him to go with Kevin O'Connell, he's going to be elevated to the offensive coordinator there. And Sean McVay's become Andy Reid. If you're his offensive coordinator, you're probably going to be a head coach sooner rather than later. So he's in a good spot to you talk about head coaches, grandfather, father, son, NFL head coaches.
That's pretty impressive. And the other thing that I forgot when I was doing my prep work for Wade Phillips, you should know this, Mr. McMullen, history buff for the NFL. He has been the head coach of 6 NFL franchises.
He's got to have the interim head coach record because he's been an interim head coach at least
3 times.
3 times, yeah.
He was head coach of the Bills, the Cowboys, and the Broncos, and he was interim for the Saints, the Texans, and one more I'm forgetting. My bad. But he's been the head coach of 6 different teams.
Yeah.
There's nobody else in the history of National Football League been the head coach of 6 different teams.
Yeah. Interim for the Falcons as well. So
Falcons, that's the other
one. I mean, well, you mentioned it. I mean, and still today at plus 70, I think a lot of people could do a lot of worse on the defensive side of the ball. But at some point, I don't even know if Wade wants to continue coaching.
He sounded like he was enjoying being the proud papa of his son and carrying water for his son, who may get a head coaching job before you know it. I think you said it here, something along the lines of anyone who actually ever stands in a urinal next to Sean McVay eventually becomes an NFL head coach.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do is get that close enough, and sooner or later you're going to get a head coaching gig. You got to believe it's going to happen for Wes Phillips too.
Yeah, I would bet on it. And I just looked it up, by the way, Jody. 82-64 as a head coach. It wasn't bad either.
Wade
Phillips.
Yeah, absolutely a winning record, like 560 something.
Yeah, 564. So.
Which is not a bad career. And I've said it too many times. I didn't say it to him on the air yesterday. He's one of those guys who was an adequate head coach. He was a great defensive coordinator. And sometimes guys should say, do I want to be great at what I do, or do I want to be slightly above average at what I do? Everybody desires the head coaching position because that's what you strive for. You want to get to the highest position in your chosen field. But he was so superior a defensive coordinator. His head coaching skills probably paled in comparison. But as you correctly point out, his win-loss record is pretty damn good. For a guy who did it as long as he did. All right. Is there going to be a Sheil Kapadia signing on Birds 365?
I hope so. Sheil said he would do it, so I'm going to hit him up as soon as I get off this morning, and hopefully.
All right. So I don't embarrass myself like I did with Mike Tanier today. Sheil, I've had Sheil on radio shows forever. Has he ever been on Birds 365?
Yeah, he's been on.
Once, Twice.
I believe just once.
Just
Could be
once? Okay,
twice.
so if I say that tomorrow, he's not going to get mad at me like Mike did today because I suggested it might have only been the second time Mike was on with us.
Yeah, he could have been on. Xander will have to answer
Xander,
that.
that's what we'll do. We'll make Xander do the work. Xander, look it up now. How many times has Shield Kapati been on the show? Because he may be on with us tomorrow. Or he may not. You're going to have to come back here in 22 hours to find out. And remember, the channel is taking some downtime around the Super Bowl. Not only us here on Birds 365, but Middle, National Football Show. We're going to take some days off leading up to the Super Bowl and a couple of days after the Super Bowl. So you absolutely, positively want to be here tomorrow because it's our last pre-Super Bowl show on Birds 365. Partner, I'll see you in 22 hours. You good with that?
Let's do it.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.